Hey guys, in this episode, what I do is I talk about the macro and the micro truths of purpose and what are the routines and the habits that we need to do to be able to focus, to be able to align ourselves, to be able to connect to our purpose, to be on point, to be on form. Hey team, how are you? So today I'm going to talk a little bit more about the idea of purpose being a very thin line, a very fine line that we have to walk upon, and it requires a lot of consciousness, a lot of awareness, a lot of mindfulness to be able to walk that path. That path is very thin and it's very precise, and so if we're not on that path, it's very difficult to maintain that path, and so we can deviate, we can come off it very quickly, and so what I want to talk about is the idea that, you know, we're only present, we're only fully conscious, we're only in our truth at the points that we are walking on that fine line, that thin line, that straight path. And so when we're not on that path, then we're impotent, we're actually limited, we're weak in our ability to impact, put powerful action into the universe. So our journey is to try and sustain, maintain, be on that path of purpose, be on that path of form, of consciousness, of awareness, of mindfulness, of being present to the moment. So that's where the real activity, that's where the human being really lies. And so, you know, to be able to maintain that path, to be able to live on that path, one has to be able to concentrate and maintain that focus. And you can only do that really if you have developed deep practices, like deep routines and rituals on a daily basis that help you sustain and maintain that course, that concentration, that focus, that treading on that fine line, because it's on that fine line of alignment where there is that wisdom, that truth, that potency and that power to be able to impact and execute your ideas, your thoughts through the physical, through your body into reality. So when that happens, then those actions are powerful, right actions, and they deliver powerful and right return, outcome, output. And so that's what we're trying to do, really. That's what we're living present to the moment to do. That's what we're living on purpose to do. And the example I give is really, if you think about it, the human being is born by default imbalanced. So, you know, the fine line is in this direction. The human being is born in balance, and their journey is each day to bring back the balance, to get centered. And they have to do that through those daily practices, the rituals. And those daily practices, those rituals, I'm trying to say, are the practicality, the practice of what I'm talking about at an abstract and spiritual level. So let me talk a little bit more about the abstract and spiritual first of all, and then I'll go on to the practical. So the philosophy, the big picture is this, that the human being is born imbalanced. All the rest of existence, all the plants, all the animals, everything else is given purpose. And so they're running on their purpose all the time. They're on form all the time. The human being is what's different. With free will comes a default state where they're imbalanced. They're part of the universe, but they're not complete. And the way the human being completes itself is through realization. Realization in awareness, becoming consciously aware of the fact that they have free will, that they have been created, that there is a higher power, and that they become so aware of that higher power, so present to the reality of the higher power, and so in awe, inspired by the magnanimity of the higher power, that they lose their identity in themselves. Meaning, when you see something so enormous relative to yourself, you pale in significance, right? And so what happens is you lose that strength, that power, that that bigness that you thought you had of yourself, because you see something more powerful. So in relation to the higher power, when you reflect, you lose your identity, you relinquish your identity, you relinquish yourself, you surrender to something that is much more powerful, a higher power, something that's higher than you, bigger than you, greater than you. And in that space, when you surrender, when you relinquish, and you do it consciously out of your free will, then in that space, when you become zeroed out, neutral, when you exit from that situation consciously, then what happens in that neutrality, the higher power, the awareness of the higher power is taken on by you. You become part of the higher power. How do you become part of the higher power? You become part of the higher power because you're now neutral. You're just a piece of pure conductivity. You're a medium because you've zeroed yourself out through your awareness, your realization, and so now you're able to allow the higher power to flow through you. And the higher power is energy, and it's a pure energy that comes through you and that you take instinctual positive action on. So the human being is by default at this level, and what happens is through their conscious awareness, through their realization, they become centered, aligned with the truth of the higher power. And as they become so conscious and aware of that, the higher power then becomes, or makes them, they become pure conductivity for the higher power to flow through and take action. So that's the big picture philosophy of the purpose of man, the human beings. What they're here for is to become that pure conductivity through awareness that allows the higher power to work through them to deliver potent and positive impact into the universe. So the spirit is going through the physical and using the physical to deliver spiritual benefits, spiritual outcome, right? That's the philosophy. The practicality is that you have to experience, you have to live through the experience of it. So how do you practically relate to that philosophy? Is that you do activities, what's called deep practice, daily routines and rituals, habits that allow that realization to take place, allow you to recognize your perspective, your place in the universe, what I call contextual awareness. And those activities that you do as practices will allow you to become centered. So in order for you to get centered, aligned, be on that thin path of purpose, which is like a very fine line, for you to get there, you have to do things in the physical, practical things that will get you to that point. And those things are basically, you have to have perspective. So you have to constantly reflect and think, what I call contextual awareness. Then you have to pray as a ritual And why do you have to pray? Prayer is a form of communication through your awareness between you and the higher power. So if the higher power does exist, then that means that you should be able to communicate. And what I mean by communicate is not necessarily that you will get communication back, but it's a feeling through experience of communication through your own vocabulary to your awareness of the higher power. That's what's prayer. Then there's meditation, and then there's exercise. I also include journaling, and walking through nature, and eating good and healthy food, having good and healthy relationships, and also I've forgotten it right now, but I'm thinking of cold showers. I actually like the idea of the practicality of cold showers that put this pressure on you that you have to resist against, and then as you do, you wake up, you have to concentrate in your thinking, and you get aligned. So so there's the philosophy, and then there's the practice. And the practice, if you follow the daily routines, rituals, and habits, then that practice aligns you, and that you actually deliver into the universe the actions, the right actions, the thin path, the straight path of action that you should be doing, because you're centered, you're aligned. But if you understand the philosophy and the spirit, it aligns you, reinforces that alignment even further, deeper. So you can have the philosophy, but if you don't do the practice, the practical stuff, then your impact into the universe is limited, because there's no output physically. And then if you do all these routines, rituals, and habits that I've mentioned to you as a matter of activity, but there's no philosophy behind it, then they lose, or those activities lose their potency and power. They're just going to impact you physically. But when you're connected both on the spiritual and the practical side of things, then the action is very powerful, very, very powerful. And so your impact into the universe, into the world, is based on your conscious awareness. So as long as you're aligned, your impact is positive. When you're offline, you're not aligned, then you're just existing, you're not actually living. And the journey in life, and it's such a difficult journey, the journey in life really is to try and maintain that course, sustain that thinking, that alignment. And how do you do that? Is by you maintaining those daily habits, the rituals, particularly in my perspective, coming from a Muslim background, is the idea of the 5 daily prayers. And, the ritual through those prayers of, how you maintain thought, and then doing what's called zikr, exercising your mind to constantly remember and be aware of the higher power. And it's almost like you're using thought and the thought of the higher power as resistance to maintain your focus. So when you think, you stay in a specific direction, a specific path, and that's that straight path, that fine path, that thin path, that is called living on point, living on purpose, being on form, success, greatness, your blueprint, your calling, flow, whatever you want to call it. So what I say is that everybody comes from different points of view from the birth circumstances. Everybody comes from different circumstances based on where they're born. And those are subjective truths. But the reality is, in those subjective truths, there is a common truth that is amongst all of us. Those subjective truths also have objectivity to them. And it's that objectivity that we meet at. We meet on a common ground in the middle. So it doesn't matter what circumstances you're born into, what ideology, what doctrines you follow or don't follow, but you're able to objectively think and see the practical truths. Those practical truths are objective truths that are common amongst all human beings, and those truths are what I call truth. And you use those as your impetus for setting your goals on how you want to live your life going forward. So together, once everybody gets to a common ground, we can all go forward using that truth. So that's all I'm going to say right now. I was going to try and do a video outside the car, but right now I did a little kind of dry run. It wasn't perfect. I'm going to try and improve on that a little bit more before I do that, because there's sound issues and there's kind of well, not choreographic, but placement issues of where I should be standing versus the camera. And I want to get that all right, but I will try and get out. But for now, I think this is a good working space, because it gives me, a clear sound and voice, and there's no noise around, so I can kind of focus my attention on, trying to give the right thoughts to you, the right articulation, the right presentation. All right, guys, so thank you for watching. I really appreciate you. Tell me what you valued in terms of any points that came through. What is certainty for you? What is the thin line of success? What is your path? Let me know. Feedback in the comments below, and let's create this community and discuss these important issues together. Talk to you guys soon. Bye now.